Have you ever tried to balance a long ruler perfectly on your finger? It seems simple, but it demonstrates a fundamental principle of physics. That perfect spot where the ruler neither tips forward nor backward is its center of gravity. It's the point around which the weight is evenly distributed. Now imagine your airplane's wing is that ruler, but instead of a single balance point, we're dealing with a multitude of forces. Instead of gravity pulling it down, air pressure pushes it up, creating lift. This lift isn't uniform across the wing. Some areas experience more pressure than others. The center of pressure, or COP, is a crucial concept for understanding how this lift is generated and distributed. It is the balance point for all the aerodynamic forces acting on the wing. It represents the location where the sum of all pressure forces effectively acts. It's the single imaginary point where the total sum of all the lifting pressure acts. It simplifies the complex pressure distribution into a single force vector. Think of it as the sky's invisible finger, pushing upwards, holding your wing up and keeping it balanced in flight. Without the upward force generated at the center of pressure, stable flight wouldn't be possible. The COP is where all the tiny pushes and pulls from the air molecules come together, creating a concentrated force. If you could gather all those upward forces into one arrow, representing the total lift, it would point up from the center of pressure. This arrow represents the resultant force of all the pressure acting on the wing. This gives us a simple way to think about and to model the complex distribution of pressure that creates lift. It allows engineers to predict and control the aircraft's behavior. The COP isn't fixed. It moves as the forces on the wing change, particularly with variations in the angle of attack. This movement directly affects how the airplane feels and responds to control inputs, influencing its stability and maneuverability. Understanding the COP and its dynamic behavior is fundamental to flight stability and control, and is a key element in aircraft design and pilot training. Lift isn't magic. It's not some mystical force that defies explanation. It's a tangible, measurable phenomenon. It's the direct result of a pressure difference, a fundamental principle of aerodynamics. This pressure difference exists between the top and bottom surfaces of the wing. The shape of the wing is specifically designed to create this pressure differential. Faster moving air, rushing over the curved top of the wing, creates an area of low pressure. The increased speed of the air molecules results in lower pressure exerted on the wing's surface. Conversely, the slower moving air flowing below the wing creates an area of high pressure. The slower air molecules exert a greater force on the underside of the wing. This imbalance, with high pressure pushing up and low pressure pulling less downwards, results in a net upward force, effectively pushing the wing upward and generating lift. However, this pressure isn't uniform across the entire wing surface. It's a dynamic and constantly changing distribution. The pressure varies significantly along the wing surface, both from the root to the tip and from the leading edge to the trailing edge. Near the leading edge, where the air first encounters the wing, the pressure difference is typically the greatest, leading to a concentration of lift generation. As the airflow progresses towards the trailing edge, this pressure difference gradually decreases, resulting in less lift generation towards the rear of the wing. To visualize this, imagine thousands of tiny invisible hands pushing up on the wing at various points, each hand representing the pressure at that specific location. Some of these hands are pushing much harder than others, reflecting the varying pressure distribution across the wing's surface. Calculating each individual force exerted by these hands in real time is computationally impossible, even with today's advanced computers. Therefore, to simplify the analysis and design process, we use the concept of the center of pressure, or COP. The COP is a single point that represents the average location of all those distributed pressures acting on the wing. This simplification allows us to visualize and calculate the overall behavior of the wing in a much more manageable way. We can treat the entire lift force as if it's acting at this single representative spot, the center of pressure. The precise location of this lift force, relative to the aircraft's center of gravity, is crucial for determining the aircraft's stability and control. It directly determines whether the aircraft's nose will tend to pitch upwards or downwards, influencing its overall flight attitude. That's the reason why aerodynamic diagrams typically depict lift as a single arrow originating from the COP. It's a visual shorthand. This representation effectively connects the complex pressure distribution on the wing to the real-world effects on the aircraft's pitch and overall flight dynamics. In essence, where the lift force acts on the wing is just as fundamentally important as the magnitude of the lift force itself. The center of pressure is a wanderer. It moves along the wing's chord as the angle of attack changes. The angle of attack, AOA, is the angle between the wing's chord and the oncoming air. As you increase AOA, the COP moves forward. As you decrease AOA, it moves rearward. At low AOA, the COP sits farther back. As AOA increases, it shifts forward, following the point of greatest lift. Near the stall, airflow separates, causing the COP to jump abruptly rearward, often dropping the nose and aiding recovery. This movement isn't just theory, it directly affects stability and control. A forward-moving COP can make the nose pitch up, while a rearward shift at stall helps the nose drop. Understanding this dance helps you anticipate how your aircraft will respond at different speeds and attitudes. The COP's movement is the invisible link between your controls and the laws of physics. The location of the center of pressure, or COP, relative to the aircraft's center of gravity, or CG, is a critical factor that determines its pitch behavior. Understanding this relationship is fundamental to understanding how an aircraft behaves in flight. In stable aircraft designs, the CG is intentionally positioned ahead of the COP. This arrangement creates a natural tendency for the aircraft to return to a stable flight attitude if disturbed. To visualize this, think of two kids on a seesaw. The CG acts as the pivot point, the fulcrum around which the aircraft rotates. The COP is where the aerodynamic lift effectively pushes upwards on the aircraft. When the COP is behind the CG, the lift force generates a nose-down moment, a rotational force that tends to pitch the aircraft's nose downwards. This nose-down moment is balanced by the downward force generated by the horizontal stabilizer located in the tail section of the aircraft. The tail creates a counteracting force, ensuring stability. As the angle of attack, or AOA, increases, the COP doesn't remain stationary. It moves forward along the wing surface. This forward movement of the COP reduces the magnitude of the nose-down moment, contributing to the aircraft's overall stability. However, if the COP moves too far forward and passes the CG, the airplane can become pitch unstable, leading to undesirable flight characteristics. In this unstable condition, the aircraft exhibits a tendency to nose up on its own, requiring constant pilot input to maintain the desired flight path. That's precisely where trim comes into play, offering a solution to manage these changing forces. By adjusting the elevator trim tab, pilots can effectively balance the aerodynamic forces acting on the aircraft, relieving the constant pressure on the yoke or stick. This allows for relaxed and efficient flight. As the aircraft slows down and the angle of attack increases, pilots typically need to apply more nose-up trim to counteract the changing aerodynamic forces. Conversely, as the aircraft speeds up, pilots will generally trim nose down to maintain a stable flight attitude. The continuous need to adjust the trim settings is a direct consequence of the COP's dynamic movement in relation to the CG. In essence, aircraft stability hinges on the intricate relationship between the center of pressure and the center of gravity. Aircraft designers meticulously calculate and balance these critical points during the design process to ensure safe, predictable, and responsive flight characteristics. If the center of pressure remained fixed in place, the task of flying an aircraft would undoubtedly be simpler, requiring less constant adjustment. However, it would also result in a less dynamic and less maneuverable aircraft, limiting its performance capabilities. The ever-shifting center of pressure is the reason why you can feel distinct pitch changes as you alter your airspeed or modify the aircraft's configuration, such as extending flaps or landing gear. So, every time you take to the skies, you're actively experiencing the effects of this constantly wandering balance point, a fundamental aspect of flight dynamics. The airfoil's shape has a huge impact on how the center of pressure behaves. Cambered airfoils, curved on top, flatter below, produce lots of lift, but their COP moves significantly with AOA. This movement can create pitch instability, so CG and tail design are critical for control. Symmetrical airfoils with identical upper and lower surfaces behave differently. On a symmetrical airfoil, the COP barely moves as AOA changes, staying near the 25% chord point. This stability is ideal for aerobatic planes and for horizontal tails, where predictable force is essential. Aerobatic planes use symmetrical airfoils for consistent control, upright or inverted. The tail's job is to balance the airplane, so a stable COP is crucial. If the tail's COP wandered, stability would be much harder to achieve. Designers choose between high lift, cambered, and stability, symmetrical, based on the aircraft's mission. The airfoil's shape is a fundamental trade-off in aircraft design. The right choice keeps the airplane controllable and safe. Meet the center of pressure's close cousin, the Aerodynamic Center, or AC. The COP is where total lift acts, but it moves with AOA, making calculations tricky. The AC, however, is a fixed point, usually at the 25% chord, where the pitching moment doesn't change with AOA. Engineers use the AC for stability calculations because it simplifies the math. Instead of a moving lift force, they use a fixed lift at the AC and a separate pitching moment. For pilots, the COP is more intuitive. It's what you feel as the airplane pitches. For designers, the AC is a mathematical convenience. Aircraft stability depends on the CG being ahead of the AC. This ensures that any increase in lift creates a nose-down moment, restoring trimmed flight. The COP is what you feel. The AC is what makes your airplane safe and predictable. Both concepts are key to understanding flight stability. So what does a wandering center of pressure feel like in the cockpit? Imagine cruising at 110 knots, perfectly trimmed, yoke-centered, hands-off, everything balanced. Now, slow to 80 knots for slow flight, you pull back, increasing AOA, and the COP moves forward. As the COP nears the CG, the nose-down tendency weakens and you need more back pressure. The controls feel heavier in pitch. This is the COP shifting. You trim nose up to relieve the pressure, creating a new equilibrium. Speed up again, and the COP moves rearward, increasing the nose-down moment. Now you need forward trim to balance the forces. Every speed change configuration changes, like extending flaps moves the COP and changes pitch forces. Good pilots anticipate these changes, trimming proactively to stay balanced. Managing the COP is a constant part of flying. You're always adjusting for the sky's invisible finger on your wing. That's what makes flying dynamic and engaging. For designers, managing the center of pressure is a central challenge for safety and performance. The goal: create an airplane that's longitudinally stable, returning to its trimmed path after a disturbance. Stability depends on the relationship between the COP, or AC, and the CG. The CG must be ahead of the COP AC for stability, creating a nose-down moment balanced by the tail. The tail's size and effectiveness are designed to counteract this moment. If the COP moves too much, the tail must be larger, adding weight and drag. Designers consider the COP's movement at all speeds, especially near stall, where a rearward shift can aid recovery. Different aircraft, trainers, airliners, aerobatic planes, balance stability and maneuverability by managing the COP. Every design choice is influenced by the need to control this invisible wandering point. The center of pressure is the sky's balancing point, moving as you change speed and angle of attack. This isn't just theory. You feel it every time you adjust pitch or trim. Understanding the COP means you know why you need back pressure when slowing down or nose-down trim when accelerating. It's the secret behind your airplane's stability and handling. Respecting the COP is respecting the physics of flight. Extending flaps, approaching a stall, or changing speed all shift the COP and require your attention. This knowledge makes you a more confident, precise pilot. Next time you fly, picture the COP sliding along your wing as you maneuver. Visualizing this invisible force helps you master the airplane. With this understanding, you fly with skill, precision, and respect for the laws that keep you aloft.